I just want to go very briefly on something that is, it's 2014. We've evolved. The technology is going at a fast rate. Things go out of style the next day. Technology is man's best friend, or it could be man's worst enemy. What's really baffling my fucking mind that I really don't understand is this new law that was just passed yesterday, a landmark law for gun manufacturers and guys who want to say, are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? In Georgia, you're allowed to carry guns everywhere. Every fucking where. I thought it was 2014, but apparently it's 1876 in Georgia. So I'm shocked. I think it's crazy, and it's bizarre. And the problem with the gun is I understand that people say it's the right to bear arms is in their Constitution, but that Constitution was done over 100 years ago. It's time to evolve. I think that guns kill people and people kill people, but if they did it physically, it'd be a little different than just pulling out a revolver and putting a bullet in somebody. I'm shocked. Tony, what's your view on this outrageous, infamous law that they passed in Georgia?
Yeah, it's called the Safe Carry Protection Act of 2014. That allows House Bill number 60. And then it allows actually residents to have concealed carry permits to take guns into bars, churches, restaurants, government buildings, school zones, even certain parts of airports, which I find frightening.
Carry in a holster. I saw people on CNN and CNBC. They were walking around on the street like in the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's. I have to admit, Frank, it's bizarre to me. It makes no sense. But I don't live there. You know, I know in Texas, it seems everyone there has a gun. From what I hear, from what I read, it seems to be very readily available to people in the state of Texas. And Georgia isn't far. It's a southern U.S. state. I'm sure Florida, very similar type of gun laws and gun thoughts. It makes no sense to me as a Canadian, a guy who, my father was a hunter, so we had hunting guns in the house, but certainly not these type of guns. So I have to admit, this makes no sense to me. But it is the thinking, and for some Americans, the right to carry arms, they take very literally.
Bear arms. But here's my problem: is how are you going to differentiate when somebody shoots you over an argument that the guy, his defense is going to be that he felt that he was being feared for his life, and that's why he shot him. Like, how is that going to change things? Is it not a backwards law? I don't care where you live in the world. You know, in the 1700s, the 1600s, everywhere, everybody had swords, everybody had stuff, because they say, based on philosophy and based on history, that man had not civilized himself and understood the civility of, socializing people, and now we get to 2014, and I think we're going backwards.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I think backwards is a pretty good word, because I don't get it, I don't understand it. But again, in all fairness, Frank, I don't live there. I didn't grow up with this right to bear arms constitution, with this thought, with this line pounding my head time and time again since I was a child. And maybe for some Americans, they interpret that differently than you and I would interpret that. Norm, what do you think?
Well, actually, in many of the United States, if not all of them, if someone breaks into your home, you are allowed to shoot them. And that's considered...
Norm.
Yeah.
What that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people walking down the street.
Yes, we are talking about the right to bear arms.
I agree with that scenario. I don't agree with people walking down like the Wild West, where they have holsters and guns and their holster, and they're walking. You're going to get into that bullshit taxi driver mentality of, are you talking to me? Are you looking at me? You know, people tend to grow a big set of balls when they have the equalizer, because when there's no gun, then there's physical strength.
Well, Frank, the biggest part of the problem in changing the U.S. Constitution, which of course was written in 1776, and back then it made sense because there were British soldiers that the Americans were fighting to gain their independence. But the biggest problem is most of the Republicans are pro-gun lobby, and they are heavily funded by the National Rifle Association, the NRA. And the funding is very important to them. And with that in mind, the NRA, I'm told, is the biggest lobby group in Washington, the most powerful lobby group in Washington. And as long as they're behind the Republicans, Frank, I don't think you'll ever see the U.S. Constitution change under any circumstances.
I don't have a problem with people respecting the Constitution. I don't have a problem if somebody breaks into your house and you feel threatened to protect your family, you shoot them, self-defense. I agree with all of that. I really do. I'm not a bullshitter. I don't hide behind sensationalism and titillation just for the sake of making headlines. I'm just telling you that they're looking for some serious trouble, because when you walk around, when you get a bunch of people walking around with guns and they're fully armed, it's going to change the dynamics of any human being, no matter how normal or how great they are. Testosterone levels and rage levels. I'll give you an example. I was watching the news. I'm in the States right now. This lady looked pretty normal. They caught her on camera. Walks into a liquor store, gets 2 six-packs, and walks right out. Doesn't pay for it. So one of the employees, in his 60s, goes out to ask her, "Why aren't you paying this?" She punched him in the face and almost ran him over for 2 six-packs. Now, I'm sure if she had a gun, she would have shot him and killed him for 2 six-packs. You understand my analogy, guys? Mm-hmm. Understand my point? Does anybody see my point, or am I fucking pointless in what I'm saying? This law that they passed is a Neanderthal, in my view, backward law. Society, since the beginning of time, since the beginning of mankind, you go forward. And that's why we're still not living in a fucking cave with a loincloth and running every day to kill some sort of animal so we can eat. You know, so I don't understand for the life of me. It's bizarre when I heard this and watched people at this meeting with fucking holsters. You're looking for trouble.
Yeah, well,
you're creating trouble. People are assholes. People are only happy when they're miserable, and you're going to cause yourself some problems.
Have we not learned anything from Columbine?
Well,
have we not learned anything from Connecticut?
Part of the problem
there in Newton. Have we not learned anything?
Part of the problem, gentlemen, is that also in America, the states are allowed to write their own legislation in a lot of areas. So you have different gun laws in Georgia than you would in the other continental.
I respect that too. I respect that. I respect that everybody is able to run, like in Canada, their province, our city, you know, and the federal government is like the father and the mother. You understand? Now, what I'm trying to say is, the United States is a brilliant country. They're very smart. They're very innovative. It's a country full of intellectuals, a lot of education. One of the most powerful countries in the world. I'm very, very proud and honored, and I'm thankful that they are cousins to the South. But I'm shocked at this law. I really am shocked. I've been in Florida a billion times. I've got a lot of family there. People carry guns, but you can't walk around with them. You can't go to a public place with them, and you can't put them in a holster and have a gun other than being a police officer or law enforcement, you know, showing. So I understand that, kind of respect it, and that's fine. And I understand, you know, there's a lot of elderly people there. They want to protect themselves because maybe mano a mano in a physical combat, they're not going to be able to do anything. Hey, Mr. Tony House.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Frankie. We have definitely made ourselves go backwards, and if you think about
not us. It has nothing to do with us. Thank God that you know we've stuck to our guns. Pardon the pun, and not had guns included. The problem here, this is why I have a beef with this. People would say, what the fuck is it to you? You're in Canada, you live in Toronto, what is it to you what's going on in Georgia? Well, I'll tell you, this is my theory. This is my mindset. There's guns now that are going to be more accessible, more easily, that's easier to sell black market, to get them up here and get them through customs and get them in the hands of the assholes that you know, do bad things in our cities in Canada. And that's my problem. Every time there's more availability to guns in the United States, we're affected in Canada because they end up coming up here because it's big business. You understand? You can't buy a gun for yourself to carry along in Canada, and it's very tough to get a permit for a concealed weapon. Almost impossible in Canada.
Yeah, well, the problem is there's lots of them now that are traded on the black market for drugs in Canada.
That's the point I just made. Yeah. So the more guns are readily available with these Neanderthal passing of these laws, it's because to pacify and pay back some of these massive multi-million-dollar lobbyists from gun manufacturers in the United States, it's mind-boggling. I really don't want to fucking dwell on it and spend an hour on it, but it's depressing, it saddens me, and I think we've done some great things to save lives in cancer research and every aspect of the diseases that are the enemies and the liabilities of just regular life.